think we are all ready to go. Okay, so welcome everyone. Welcome back to the Mourning Coffee Podcast. I am your host, Brooke Carlock. This is a place where we talk grief, loss, trauma, and the messy middle of trying to figure out how to keep living and going and loving and showing up after life knocks the wind right out of us. Sorry, that's whew, getting used to a new system if you can't figure that out, everyone. So I apologize. But anyway, my guest introduction today, I am so excited. I am joined today by Becky. It's Asta, right? Did I say that right?
Aste.
Aste,
Pretty
okay.
close.
I practiced it like 20 times and I knew I was going to get it wrong. Becky helps individuals and couples understand how grief and loss and unresolved trauma kind of live in the body and shape how we show up in love and intimacy and partnership in our relationships. I am super grateful that she's here because this is something that I went through after the loss of my daughter, Libby. I've had a bunch of relationship drama. And I don't feel like it gets enough attention how trauma and loss kind of follow us into our marriages and relationships and what healing can actually look like when we address it. So thank you so much for joining us, Becky. I kind of wanted to start off, I know because our show mostly deals with grief and loss, that you lost your father at a pretty young age. So I was wondering if you could kind of tell us about that and how did that loss kind of shape the way that you learned to survive early on?
Yeah, my dad passed away from a heart attack when he was 57. I was 18, and it was my first week of college. So I got the news on the way to one of my first college classes from my mom. My mom said, "Honey, I'm so sorry. Daddy died last night." And it was just shell shock. That was my first giant loss. I was a daddy's girl. And so I remember the last word she said before hopping off that phone call was, "But honey, you can't quit school. You have to keep going. You have to make daddy proud." So
Ooh.
now I can, in retrospect, yeah, be able to recognize, like, ooh, okay, well, that kicked me in real fast to the next decade of hyperachieving and
Yeah.
performing and really running from any kind of sitting with my pain. I was Energizer Bunny, go, go, go. So that's how I dealt with the loss of my dad.
Yeah, and how did that hyperachievement that you kind of used, which I can 100% relate to that because I was the same way. I was a daddy's girl. My dad died not long ago, but when, I was older, but still I still feel that sense of like wanting to make him proud in the stuff that I do. I always looked for that validation from him, probably in an unhealthy way. So how did that hyperachievement kind of show up in your relationships later on in your life?
Yeah, so I got married really young. It was actually right after I graduated college. I met my husband in college. I was only 21, he was 23. And I saw just a lot of early cycles early on that at the time I didn't have words for. Best I could describe it was chase and run, where I felt like
Okay.
I was energetically chasing him. He was running, trying to find independence, and I later learned language for that. I identified with codependent and him going into his own addictions to soothe and find solace, and then anxious attached, avoidant attached. Like all this language I learned after a decade of self development, but I didn't feel any better or feel any closer to my husband. We weren't changing the dance. So that performance showed up in the little things, like let me outdo myself with the housework and take on all the responsibility and try to remind you of why I'm worthy to be kept by making your favorite dinner, keeping the house perfectly clean, all of that. Or even in conflict, my
Yeah.
fawn response or people pleaser response would kick in really, really fast. Like, how can I keep you proud of me and happy with me? And in order to secure that connection is staying, that you're not going to abandon me
Yeah.
too. Didn't have words for any of that, but that was what was going on beneath the surface.
Oh, that sounds achingly familiar to me because I had the
Yes,
same
me
thing where
nodding. Yeah.
yeah, I married my high school sweetheart, and it was a very kind of similar situation with the people pleasing and just trying to be like the best of everything and overachieve and nothing. The problem with me, nothing was ever good enough. Like I always wanted more was my problem. So yeah, we definitely had our issues. So I'm curious to hear how you guys work things out. So we will get into there. But most people don't realize that our grief and our trauma kind of live in our bodies and not just our minds. So how does that unresolved grief kind of show up in your nervous system?
Yeah, amazing question. This was where I was stuck for so long and going to all the mainstream modalities of healing to try to save my marriage, change that dance. And by mainstream, I just mean all the things from the neck up, which I still use and utilize, but it was ignoring everything from the neck down
Mhm.
in my body. And so after a decade of talk therapy and couples counseling and scavenging through every podcast, book, Instagram account, article I could get my hands on, I found myself 2 kids and 10 years later, separated on the verge of divorce, having genuine conversations about, okay, what are the legal costs and the grounds? And like, this felt like our last best option, even though it was the last thing I wanted, especially me as the
Mhm.
fear of abandonment girl. So I stumbled upon a online coach. I had never done online coaching, and I stumbled upon her account on Instagram. Fast forward, she was the first introduction to somatic work, which is just healing from the neck down, being able to learn how our body keeps the score of the trauma we've survived, and to get your nervous system back into a state of I am safe. Maybe there was a lot of bears in the room, but I got to learn how to live as if the bear is not still in the room and be
Right.
able to breathe again, present connection. So, really long story short, she, going through her program, taught me how to move trauma out of the body, tap back into a safe nervous system after years of hyperachieving and pleasing and running, honestly, a lot of
Yeah.
performing and survival energy to, oh my God, I'm okay whether or not this marriage works out. And
Yeah.
that was monumental for me. For,
Yeah.
my whole marriage, it was clutching, like I need to save this and make sure that it stays because I can't lose anymore. I've already
Yeah.
lost so much. So, yeah, that was the turning point. We can get into more details if you want.
Yeah. So I just wanted to ask a quick question, because what I have found, so I was married to my first husband, who is I have 3 kids and is their father. We were married for 18 years before we got divorced, and there was infidelity uh, relatively early on when our kids were really young and our daughter wasn't born yet. And I tell people that was trauma for me. Like that
Yeah.
was up to that point. Um, my sister had passed away already and some grandparents, but the grief that I felt when that happened was worse. It was pretty much the worst thing that had ever happened to me up to that point, because it was like the whole future that I had seen for myself and imagined for myself just crumbled. And that kind of like
Yep.
perfect life that I was shooting for, like I knew it was never going to happen. And I was just completely blindsided, and it was awful. It was severely traumatic. We ended up, I'm curious to hear, I know that you say that you kind of married the same person 3 times, or it's something like that.
Yeah.
So I'll let
My
you get
third
into
marriage.
that. But yeah, it was kind of interesting because after that first time, we did try to work things out, and we were together for a long time after that. And I thought that everything was fine and that things were better and whatever. And then it happened again. And that was finally when I was like, ugh. And it was honestly my daughter, um, who was little at the time, probably like 6 or 7 when that happened. And I just kept looking at her, saying, like, if this were her, what would I tell her to do? And the obvious answer was like, try, just go, like, don't let this keep happening to you. So we ended up getting divorced, and we stayed, very cordial. But then it's almost after the death of our daughter, everything changed again after that as well. And he is now literally my best friend, because he's the only person that
Wow.
understands that grief and that trauma that we shared together.
Yeah.
So I guess I want to ask, all that to say, everything you're saying sounds very familiar. But how does unprocessed grief and trauma tend to show up in marriages and long-term relationships?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. And thanks for sharing. I'm curious, are you together romantically now or just best friends
No, we're just
co-parenting?
best friends.
Amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. My mom was the same with her first husband. We used to, even after she married my dad, have family vacations with her first husband. I'm like, this is so cool and rare.
Yeah, we do the same
Um,
thing, and everyone's like, "When are you getting back together?" And I'm like, "Oh, we're not getting back together, but we hang out all the time and do stuff with the kids all the time." And yeah, people think it's very weird, but
I
but like
love it so much.
after you lose a child, it's kind of like you don't care if other people think you're weird, so
Oh, yeah,
we just do our thing.
100%.
Yeah, yeah,
I love that. Yeah, I often say trauma is like the third party in a marriage. And, there's all types of different preferences for how people do relationships. I always say I'm monogamous. I'm the penguin for life, one mate for life,
yeah.
personally type. But trauma felt like this third party in our marriage. It's like we're in an open marriage with our trauma right now. And it was really hard to put a finger on because it felt like the invisible elephant in the room. It
Hmm.
just felt like there was always this undercurrent of tension, of distance, of that sense of we're not vibing. And there was moments where we would, and so it was like gambling, right? It was like getting the hit of dopamine and wanting to chase that
Right.
good feeling again, but that was the cycle we were in. So trauma, whatever we've been through, grief, loss, abuse, abandonment, our body does keep the score of it. It remembers that, not because it's this evil scorekeeper and just wants us to remember all the bad things, but the
Right.
way that our nervous system is designed intelligently is to be able to protect us from future pain. So it does have this negativity bias of, okay, if you got hit by a car, we're going to remember that. And that, for example, happened to me. I got in a car accident in college. Anytime I saw something out of my right view, mirror, my whole body would respond
Yep.
before I had any thoughts flood in. It was just the tensing and the bracing. So if you've been through relationship trauma, which I too have experienced betrayal trauma, and that is its own unique beast on the nervous system. For the women that come to work with me, that's the number one trauma that they're coming to heal. And so the impact that it has on the nervous system is you are hypervigilantly often scanning for the next threat. You're either scrolling through his phone or his
Right.
search history or just looking at any little facial expression to see, okay, can I get a hint of betrayal again so that it doesn't surprise me like it did last time? I want to catch it. The nervous system is just trying to protect you from more of that. Or it can just show up in the bracing and the tensing, even in the wanting closeness, just noticing that your breath patterns are starting to get really tight and short, or your body is kind of rigid versus fluid and open. And so there's different ways that it shows up symptom wise in the body. But
Mhm.
it really is just a sign that, okay, you're still holding on to and may not have released some of the stuff from in the past. And the way we try to, again, that mainstream modality of trying to release it is we try to outthink our thoughts or talk through it. And that's part of the puzzle. But when you learn the nervous system has this giant nerve called the vagus nerve that runs from the base of the skull to the bottom of the spine
Right.
and constantly sending messages up and down that vagus nerve and communication. So when we learn only 20% of those messages go from our brain to our body, but 80% go from our body to our brain, we realize, okay, if we want to release that trauma, that third party in the marriage, everything from the neck up, the talking, the listening, the auditory, like, is 20% of the puzzle. But we're going to feel like a salmon swimming upstream if we're only living in that area. You got
Mm.
to learn how to leverage that 80%, go into the nervous system, work with the body so that now you're working with the big flow, the big current. You don't feel like a salmon swimming upstream. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And that's so interesting because that's something, I mean, we did a bunch of counseling and I did personally myself a bunch of
Yeah.
counseling and that never came up. It never
Never,
came up
never does.
anywhere with
Yeah.
any of the people that I talked to, but it makes sense. So when one partner has kind of the unresolved trauma and is showing up in that way, how does that impact the relationship and the communication and the trust between partners?
It's like what came first, the chicken or the egg? It's
Yeah.
like I'm bracing and I'm afraid and I'm guarded. And so that's triggering his sense of, oh, I'm not good enough and I can't be trusted. And it like then begins and perpetuates
Oh my
the
gosh, yeah.
cycle. And it's and it's a not fun cycle to be stuck in. So what can break that, at least what worked for me, what works for my clients, is for the first time being able to not just hook yourself to the story and figure out the why, but in those moments that you're triggered, be able to break the circuit. And can you hear my kid just yell in the
It's
background?
okay.
Sorry, my kids downstairs. What helped me is being able to learn basic grounding techniques in that time, like so
Okay.
basic that I was annoyed. So basic, like this is kindergarten stuff I'm learning. Like it should be harder to
Yeah.
break such a hard thing and a hard pattern, but I was doing things like five senses. Okay, I'm triggered. What are five things I can see, four things I can hear, three things I can touch, two things I can taste, one thing I can
Yeah.
smell? Or tuning into the breath, being able to take deep breaths. Box breathing is an easy one. You can look it up on YouTube. But that's what started to signal to him, like, whoa, there's something different about Becky. It's
Yeah.
not more words. She's not being more verbose or saying something more convincing. I sense for the first time that she's got herself. There's this energy of, I don't need to say the right thing, answer in a certain way. She's, for the first time since meeting her, got this grounded energy, and I feel safe to move closer.
Yeah, those are, I mean, all the things that you said that seem so basic are things that I've talked about a million times with my audience as far as dealing with grief, just going back to those basics. So I've got videos on box breathing and the senses and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So because they're just those kind of rudimentary somatic activities are so great just in general for a lot of situations, but interesting that they also, I never thought about how they could also help relationships. So can you get back into a little bit with your relationship in particular? Like I was saying, I think you say that you've had 3 marriages to the same person. Is that right? So can you tell us about that and what made rebuilding possible for you instead of deciding to call it quits?
Yeah, like I said, we got married so young, so it felt like at first, and the environment that we met in was through a church that was very, it had its great things in retrospect. We're no longer a part of it, but it also was very high on things like purity culture and behavior
Mm,
control. And there was a lot of religious trauma that we had to heal. So meeting in that environment, which was very performative and a lot of fear of punishment, was kind of our first marriage and how we started out. And so that first chapter ends in separation near divorce. That's when I find somatic healing. We do decide to get back together, and that was our healing phase. It was
okay.
at first just a pulse. Like we were coding, oh my God, there's a pulse. Like we're coming back to life. Both of us were stepping gingerly, like we don't know what to expect from this. We don't even know if this is long term. It's just one day at a time. And then this next chapter of like building from a new foundation has felt the thriving that we've been searching for the whole time. You know, just the silliness, the play restored, the banter, the friendship, and still have our junk. I recently just lost my mom a month and a half ago. So that has stirred back up so much
Yeah,
of those old abandonment
I'm
stuff. And
sorry.
we're working with, thank you. We're working with a counselor, and, you know, it just feels like, okay, here we go. Like same triggers that we're used to. But for me, it feels like I'm starting at ground zero in a way. Like, oh my God, I've never navigated this stuff without my mom on earth. So, whole nother conversation. But that's what I mean by, yeah, I'm on my third marriage now to the same man. And every time it's just this coming back to an honest conversation of, yeah, we're evolving. We're human beings. We're meant
Yeah.
to. And in this next phase of evolution, like how do we stay aligned? Does alignment, does connection and staying on the same path together still feel in alignment? Having those, for me, what were really hard conversations at
Yeah.
first because of the deep fear of being alone, separated, abandoned.
Yeah. Are you okay talking about stuff with your mom? I know it's early.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a grief show. So I wanted to check, but I feel like that would really apply to my audience. So I'm just wondering, what are some of the tools, the somatic tools that you're using to cope with that loss since it's so early? I mean, I know after I lost the people in my life, it was the early days were so like you're just trying to survive.
Yeah.
So you might have gone back to the basics, or since you already have done the basics so often and know a lot more than that, did you find you could skip over that, and is something else working for you?
Yeah, it's honestly ripped me open. When I think of the biggest, most major traumas in my life, what does come up is my dad suddenly losing him, and then my marriage very closely almost coming to an end, and then all the trauma just that we've been through. But this one has felt like a unique beast, and it's hard to know because it's the freshest, if that's
Yeah.
why it feels like the worst it's ever been through, or if it really is because this is my primal umbilical connection.
Right.
And so it has been one day at a time. Like I said earlier with my dad, I soothed and coped and survived by busying myself. And he was the achiever of my two parents. He was the go getter. My mom was way more present and was like a stay at home mom. And I notice myself being the opposite in how I'm coping. I'm just taking
Okay.
so much off my plate. I'm working less than I ever have. I'm slowing down more than I ever have. And I'm doing things like actually have them right here. So this is kind of wild. Brooke, she left journals for me. She
Oh,
journaled
wow.
from the time I was born to went to high school, and she saved them for me because she wanted to give them to me one day. I know she was in the newspaper for it.
Oh,
It's wild. Like, who
that's
does that?
amazing.
So this has been my lifeline. I'm just like searching for any kind of connection.
Oh,
And so I'm sure you relate to this in your listeners, but like, yeah, over there, I'm looking, I have like a blanket of hers, it's things like that, just trying to smell her, like any
yeah.
kind of connection I can still have. And then for me, spiritually, one of the things that has been huge is just seeing signs from the other side. I know people have different beliefs about
Mhm.
that, but just getting little signs, little nudges, little like, is that coincidence or no? Like for me personally, I
Yeah.
don't believe
Yeah.
coincidences. So that grief counseling, and honestly, I just think the biggest tool in my toolbox right now is practicing the radical self compassion for the moments that I do lose it. And I'm noticing myself dropping things, breaking things a lot more. I'm like, ooh, I recognize this. Last time I was dropping things this much was when my husband and I were almost divorced.
Yeah.
And so just being like, it's okay, Becky. Like,
Mm.
you're going through it. This is feels rough because it is rough.
Yeah. Well, it's great that you can
Yeah.
recognize that now, instead of just trying to power through it. Those journals, though,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, that must be, I'm just thinking like if I would have, that must be
Yeah.
amazing, but also really difficult at the same time to kind of have those words from her. Oof.
It's definitely both. Yeah. And I thought it was just going to be her, like, Becky did this, Becky did that. But I'm getting the tea, Brooke. I'm getting the
Oh,
tea on her
wow.
marriage, her mental health. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm a reality TV show girl. I'm like, this is the best reality series. Yeah. And it's inspired me to start doing it for my kids because it has felt like such a lifeline. And so that's been a way to cope too when I'm
Yeah.
journaling to my kids. I'm like, this is me feeling close to my
Oh,
mom. So,
that's
and then on the
amazing.
somatic front, like I'm getting a lot of body work. I've gotten more massages in my life than I've
Mhm.
ever gotten. And it feels overly indulgent. But then I hear my mom's voice like, girl, go get the massages.
Yeah.
If there's ever a time to do it, get it now.
Yeah. Do what you need to do. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And how are things with, I mean, as far as this grief and loss, goes, how are things with your husband this time around now that you have the tools to kind of navigate what you're going through?
Yeah, overall, he's been such a source of comfort and empathy and support. The biggest trigger we've had was about 3 weeks ago, and it was the day after New Year's, because on the way to the New Year's party, I had this first sense of what's called attachment panic, but it wasn't just, whoa, neither of my parents are here, and just logically understanding it. It was all of a sudden this sense of urgency rose in my body, and this panic of the best way I can describe it. It felt like I was brought to the mall by my parents, and then all of a sudden they disappeared. And I'm like, where are they? Like
Yeah.
freaking out, like starting to panic, couldn't breathe. Like, we have to go find them. And that felt like a lot. And it started this story of, whoo, at what point do I start feeling too much for my husband? He's been empathetic until now, but when do I run out of this empathy, and when does it
Mhm.
start getting old? And just starting to pull back and starting to brace and fear. loss, and then noticing the scanning again of any little sign or signal. So one night I crawled into bed and I went to go lay on him, and he had had just such a long day, and he let out this, like I just want some space.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Brooke,
Oh,
I flew out of that bed faster than I think I've ever moved in my life. I like flew, this is my bedroom. I flew out that door. I slammed the door
yeah.
so loud behind me. And I was like, oh my God, that was like I've already lost my dad, my mom. Now I future tripped in that moment. So
Right.
now you're leaving me just because you want space at bedtime.
Oh my
So we were
gosh.
able to talk about it. Like that night, I came back into bed. He's like, "Are you all right?" I was like, "No, but I'm tired. I need sleep. Can we talk about it tomorrow?" And he was like, "You didn't let me finish my sentence, babe, but I was trying to say I don't have capacity right now, but like I'm open to you if you just need to like snuggle up next to me." But I just, because I also was asking for him to talk through it a lot.
Yeah.
I was just in a state of that. And he's like, "I don't have capacity to talk, but I'll hold you." Whatever. We talked through it the next day. We were able to bring it up in counseling. Um, but I'm grateful for, yeah, the toolbox that I had to be able to recognize, like, I'm so in my just threat response right now. Like, I know this isn't real. My husband's just tired. And then once I was able to regulate my body, like sleep, take some space to ground again and get back into my breath, get out of the replay of all the past traumas and all the future tripping of the future,
Yep.
get my nervous system back to now, we could have a healing conversation about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds like a healthy reaction to what happened. Obviously that first instinct to kind of fly out the door. But then the fact that you could recognize it and come back and you guys can have that good communication is a great sign. So for couples who might be going through something similar like grief or trauma or betrayal, where is a good place for them to kind of start healing without feeling overwhelmed?
Yeah. It depends your personality. Some people, a good start is following certain accounts or just podcasts, to learn kind of the basics, start absorbing just the language of what it even is like to get into the nervous system. Because it really is simple. It's not rocket science. It's just learning how to be with your body in a way that soothes it. Like a crying baby, learning how to treat your body like this crying baby and to be
Yeah.
with it and hold it and not abandon it. And so for me, that's what I suggest is follow an Instagram account or two or a podcast. I can give you mine. Um, and others, they're like overwhelmed by social media. So I get that. But this YouTube channel is fantastic. Like I've watched your videos, Brooke.
Thank
This is
you.
amazing. And so that's a good foundation to start. And then deeper support is always available. And if people need recommendations, I'm sure you have some. I have recommendations as well for deeper work, whether it's a counselor or a coach.
Okay.
If people are bookworms, I like to recommend Waking the Tiger by Peter Levine.
Okay.
He studies animal wildlife and studies how animals naturally, when there's a threat or a danger and the danger is past, they naturally shake. And he studies their nervous systems and how somatically they discharge that energy, as opposed to us, in modern day 2026 humaning, we hold so much in, we hold so much together. It's
Yep.
not proper to shake or do things like that. And so learning from that's a really simple read, whereas The Body Keeps the Score is the Bible of somatic work, but it's very heady.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
are in trauma, like that's not the best place to
It's a lot.
start.
It is.
The title is enough. You could just read the title, you get the point.
Yeah. Yeah. So how does someone know? Like if someone feels kind of stuck in that survival mode in their relationship and they're just not sure. I mean, I've been at that place twice with my first husband after that kind of second, affair, and then with my second husband after my daughter died, you know, there was a lot going on there. That is also a whole different show. But but for someone who's in the position where they're trying to decide what to do you have any advice of like things to look for that tell you that healing might be possible? or,
Yeah.
how to know when to throw in the towel and be like, this is not going to happen.
Yeah. So you mean for the woman in the position of should I stay and try to work out this
Yeah,
relationship
I
or
know
should
that's
I
a loaded
go?
question. And it's probably different,
Loaded.
for each couple, but I didn't know if in general there were kind of red
Yeah.
flags to look for or green flags
Yeah.
that it could work out.
Loaded, layered, but the most common question. The two most common questions I get is how do I know if should stay or should I go? And then also, is healing possible if my partner's not on board with the healing
Okay.
journey right
Yep.
now?
Yep.
So, but to answer the should I stay or should I go, that's where I was too. I was torturing myself with indecision for the majority of our relationship and constantly flip-flopping back and forth. And the more I tried to think through it or talk through it or read and search for the answers, the more confused I got. And so my invitation would be start to learn about how to heal on the body level, because all those ruminating thoughts and the indecision and the not being able to trust your intuition really does lead to your nervous system. Your body is still just holding on to past stuff and it's still operating as if there is a bear in the room, which for some women in cases of abuse, let's say there still is a bear in the room, and that's a different conversation. But for women that are ready to just get through survival mode and start to learn to thrive again, it is going to the body and calming that nervous system so that you can be able to hear that God whisper or that intuition or to find the clarity. You cannot find the clarity when your nervous system is in, on fire mode.
Yeah. Is there anything that just sticks out to you as like this isn't gonna work, or that you don't, the person shouldn't make it work? I'm assuming, if abuse or something like that comes up, it's a lot more complicated.
Yeah, if abuse comes up, that is first order of business is how can we get you to safety? So
Yeah.
for women who physically can't leave the situation, if it's a thing of domestic violence, that's actually out of my scope of practice. I will connect her with a
Yeah.
practitioner and a support group that specializes in domestic abuse. But first order of business, whether or not the relationship and the marriage is going to heal, there needs to be some level of separation to get her body back into safety. And so I have seen marriages heal after that, but not without that preliminary reset of we need to rebuild the foundation. This woman needs to get some strong boundaries and have a ton of empathetic support around her to walk her through that. So yes, unique case with physical abuse, but the women that come to me, there is some dynamics of emotional abuse or psychological, spiritual abuse, and that is up my alley. And in those same situations, similar to a frog in boiling water, if you've been used to this, whether your whole life or just it's been an extended period of time of this going on in the marriage, it's really going to be hard for you to see it for what it is. And so you've got to get your nervous system back into a place of, okay, I can breathe deeply. I can stay in the present moment. At first, it's just for sips and tastes, but to be able to have safe people that you trust to reflect back to you, like what really is going on in your intuition, not just getting a bunch of unsolicited advice or somebody telling you what's the best move for your marriage, but surrounding yourself by people who are going to help you get safe again in your own body, in your own environment, and be able to hear what your intuition is saying. Yeah. So what I say for clients is I actually don't have an agenda for your marriage, whether to force it to work or get out of here, but I am going to coach you to be able to tune in to your highest self and what the next best steps are.
Yeah, that's great. So for someone who's watching, if they were to contact you, let's say, a lot of my audience, a lot of them are grieving parents, or have gone through a deep loss of someone that they really love. Where would you start with someone like that? I'm just trying to think, like, after my daughter died with my second husband, just to, throw out an example of what I'm asking here, like, we were not getting along for a long time before that, and we were in therapy and it was not going well. And then after I lost my daughter, it was some of the things that he said, without getting too deep into it, were just like, they were huge red flags. And I was just like, okay, I just can't do this anymore. Yeah. So we ended things. But if someone's in that situation after a deep loss, and let's say the partner is not very willing to work on things, what would you say to someone like that? Where would you start with them?
Yeah, I would encourage them to, if they're at a place where they can't make any kind of investment, there's so much free healing available. So I would point them to podcasts or specific accounts that I trust where they can just start learning. Because, yes, I talk so much about the body and the nervous system, but at
Yeah.
first, knowledge is power. Like, it does help to have a language and be able to just have awareness and start to absorb and let into your system truth about the situation. And so I would point them to somewhere like your YouTube channel, podcast, Instagram account. And then if they are able to go deeper into coaching, I would encourage them to explore a practitioner that resonates with them. That woman that I ended up working with, it was just a full body, hell yes. I was binging her Instagram content every day. Like, I
Yeah.
really felt seen, understood, and I also felt like she wasn't man bashing. She wasn't just like throwing out the word narcissist willy-nilly.
Right.
Like, it really was this compassionate, objective approach to help the woman decide for herself what was healthiest.
Yeah.
So, is that what you mean? Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering some kind like if someone were going to work with you. I mean
Yeah.
the podcasts and learning and books and things like that, that's the exact same thing that I tell people who have just gone through grief. Like, one of the most helpful things is to learn about grief. And that's what I did, and it was super helpful for me personally. But if someone is kind of beyond that and they wanted to contact you to kind of help them with the nervous system and the somatic stuff, what are some of the basic things, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Yeah.
What can they expect from working with you?
Awesome. Yeah, they can book a call with me, just a free consultation. We can chat through where they're at, see if it's an aligned fit. Best case scenario, I can tell them how to get started on what's called my Root to Rise journey. It's a
Okay.
90-day journey group coaching program for women to be able to find safety again in their body, dissolve shame, and be able to learn how to communicate in their relationship to find clarity on healing or stepping away, like whatever the clarity needs to be through nonverbal communication. So there's a big focus on, our energy and our tone and our facial expression, body language, being able to communicate with that, because that's 93% of
I was going to say
communication, only
that's
7.
so important.
Yeah,
That's
only
half the
7%
battle is the
of
tones.
communication. It's actually 93% of the
Is it?
battle.
Yeah.
Only
I can believe it.
7%.
I can believe it.
Yeah. 7% is words coming out of our mouth in communication. The rest is body language, nonverbal. So it's a 90-day journey to help her, be able to reclaim her own truth, be able to communicate that in a safe way to her husband, change the dance. So that's what we would explore on the call if that's the best fit. If not, again, I've got a repertoire of practitioners I could refer her out to. So I can give you my link if you want to put it in the show notes.
Absolutely. I was just going to say, where can let us know, because we're going to wrap up here. So can you let people know where to find you? And I will leave links for everything in the description.
Yeah, so Instagram, Becky_Aste. I'm on there. That's always me too in the DMs if you want to say hi. It's not a robot or my team responding. And then I have a podcast, which I love, which I'd love to have you on, Brooke. It's called Your Breakthrough Blueprint.
Okay.
Yeah, it's streaming on all platforms, Your Breakthrough Blueprint.
Okay. I will definitely link that below. Yeah, and I'd love to be on it. That would be awesome. But okay,
Awesome.
I will leave all those links. Thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything that you want to wrap up with, or any messages for people who might be watching? No pressure if there's not.
If I could summarize all of this, like, when you're in grief, everything feels overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
And so the simple one offering, an invitation I'd leave you with, is just practicing this week, putting your hand on your heart, and that radical self-compassion of telling yourself you're doing a great job, and anyone in your position would be feeling what you're feeling right now. And even adding a jingle if you want. Like, when I was first practicing this, I made up my own jingle. I was like, Becky's doing a good job. Becky's doing a good job. And I would pat my chest and sing that. And man,
that is fantastic. I have never heard that before. Make up a jingle. I'm going to add that to my list of helpful things for people to do. I'm And I'm gonna have to come up with my own jingle. We'll have to see what that ends up being.
Yeah,
Becky,
let me
thank
know
you
once you've
so
got
so
it.
much. I really appreciate you joining us today. We did talk a little bit about your mom's journals. I just wanted to let people know I am doing live journaling actually tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on my YouTube channel. So every week we do a new journal topic, and I just turn on some light music and we write together, just to kind of have that community help us get through our grief and loss and have some camaraderie. So please feel free to join us tonight if you are watching. If you're watching on the replay, make sure you hit like, subscribe, all that stuff. You guys know what to do. So thanks again, Becky, and we will see you guys next week with our next podcast. Take care, everyone.